guys, it's Abby and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to share with you my iPad lettering process using my iPad Pro. A lot of you have been requesting this video because coming from a traditional background, I have been doing hand lettering by hand using paint and using ink and watercolor and basically drawing on paper, and shifting to digital has really helped me sort of form a better understanding of how the process works, what techniques I could apply, and basically get a better feel of how lettering can be adapted in a digital context. So today I'm partnering with Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 25,000 classes on art, design, business, and more. Not only that, it also caters to other things such as marketing, improving your business, entrepreneurship, and everything basically that you want to learn in order for you to keep creating and keep making things. I have personally been getting into the iPad lettering bandwagon, so I have been learning all these classes and techniques on how to do digital lettering because it has really been a way for me to learn, not just for personal consumption, but also something that I can share with you guys. So I am giving you the opportunity to access all these amazing classes at the comfort of your home. By clicking the link down below, you'll be able to access 2 months worth of Skillshare classes for free for the first 500 subscribers. Not only do you get access to all these amazing classes, but you also get to interact with the community, work on projects, and not only just help you in your career, but also feed your curiosity and generally be interested in so many things. And as you know, learning is always a good idea. So speaking of learning, keep watching to learn more about my iPad lettering process. So to start off, I am launching Procreate on my iPad. This is an iPad Pro 3rd generation with the Apple Pencil. This one's actually magnetic, so it sticks here at the bottom. I'm launching my Procreate app. That's where we're going to start. So if you're familiar with Procreate, you'd know that there are a lot of features and a lot of updates in the past couple of years. This one, I guess, is the updated version. I'm going to start by clicking the plus sign and clicking square so that we have an automatic square image that we can use for the artwork. I am now heading to the tool section and adding this drawing guide for the canvas. So as you can see, there's like a grid here, and I find that it's easier to make artwork that has a grid because you get to see where everything goes basically. I'm going to use the pencil brush. This is my favorite 6B pencil. You can adjust the streamlining. This actually makes sure that you can make fluid strokes like this, but since we're doing some sketches, I really just prefer no streamline. And what I like to do is before I use my brush pens, I actually draw the whole thing out first because I'm very particular with how the layouts go. So basically, I'm using the grid and sort of creating my quote. It sort of feels like a pencil in some way, which I like because I always start out with the rough drafts and that's how I sort of progress further. So I'm just gonna use a really quick quote. This is create today, one of my favorite mantras when it comes to making art. So for this one, I am really just drawing everything in without particularly setting on the spacing, the structure, and then eventually that's where I edit thoroughly if I add a new layer or if I want to sort of enhance the coloring and see to it that the whole artwork comes into full circle. So yeah, this is like a really rough draft. I really like using black. I don't know why, but some people actually use like reds or other colors for their pencil work. So I'm just gonna add the word today down here. So sometimes they won't be in proportion, and what I like about Procreate is you always have the undo function and this selective tool so that you can work around specific areas of your lettering. So it took me like maybe 3 months to really get used to this, especially because I only got this screen recently, and it's been really helpful because I find it easier to draw with this texture. It's like a paperish texture and it's matte, so it also doesn't hurt my eyes that much. Right now I'm just brushing up on the last few letters. So if you notice, I'm very particular with these things, maybe the letter T is a bit smaller than the other letters. So what I can do is actually edit it later on. And I guess in terms of my digital process, it kind of is the same as how I paint. It's just that it's faster because I get to edit my way out of things and undo things that are kind of faulty, and I guess that's something that I really like about digital work. So here I'm just gonna click on this T area, and I can choose to enlarge it and make it smaller. So I'm putting everything in one layer, as you can see here. So that means I have to move the whole thing. But if you're very particular, you can actually separate both of them. So I did this just as a base, as a guide. Now I'm going to add another layer, and I'm gonna choose a color. So I'm gonna use this like as a background color. So you just drag the whole thing. And what happens is, you can still put it at the back. And what I do here is, since this is my base or my draft, I lessen the opacity just so I can further see how the structure will look like. But in this case, I'm going to actually use a white colored brush, and I'm gonna go to my brush calligraphy set. This is one of my favorite brush sets. I will link them all down below for you to use and download and purchase. So Absolute Brush is actually my absolute favorite, no pun intended. So what I'm gonna do is actually trace over the whole thing. You can also try out different brushes. At this point, these brushes have streamlines. I find it's better to have at least like 50% because it helps me sort of get a grip of the whole structure. Earlier, we were just drawing the whole thing and sketching it, but now it's easier because you have to be able to have at least an idea of how the structure will look like, and you want your lettering to sort of blend seamlessly. So I am just alternating the pressures of my pencil. What I like about the Apple Pencil is very flexible and very versatile in terms of, look at the strokes. You can just go up and down, just like a brush pen basically. Now, sometimes the strokes don't just really come out as planned, so what I do is I will go back to them later on once I am finished with the whole layout. So what I did earlier was sort of like a guide for me, just so when I trace over it, it's easier to actually see how the layout will pan out, and it's not as hard. Because I don't like going straight to brush. I'm not very fond of that. I'm very much of a person who likes to make sure everything I plan happens. So that is also why I do a lot of layouts and drafts prior. So you can also adjust the opacity to this, but further on I am not really adjusting, because if you notice, there are some erased parts, and I really like it because it adds some character to the stroke itself. You can also make the sides bigger, smaller. This one takes really a long time to get used to, especially this part, the waves. So I'm going to also add it here. Same thing. So this one is a really basic color scheme. I tend to use just white because it really stands out when you put it on a solid colored background like this yellow. And then later I'm actually gonna add some shadows just so it's easier to see it and it's gonna pop out even more. And I have a really good shortcut for doing shadows, which is one of the perks of using an iPad. So here's two. I tend to be really OC with these strokes, so later on you will see how I edit most of them. Just finishing up the A's. And if it doesn't really connect, it's fine. You can just go back to it later. That's the good part about this. And you don't really have to do everything in one go, especially when it comes to these like really big strokes. Sometimes it just really doesn't work out that well, so you have to go back and redo most of it, but you'll get used to it. I think learning curve wise took me around 4 months to get used to my iPad, mostly because I am very much attached to my traditional materials. But this one is really easy for me because I didn't really have to adapt to a lot of new things. It was more of just the techniques and making sure that I really get things across that are still similar to my process of doing traditional lettering. So I'm just adding these accents just so it's kind of not that empty. And what I can do is now I can delete this layer, so you now have this layer, and you can always duplicate this. And what I'm going to do is actually get a tealish color and drag it over these letter forms to create that shadow that I was talking about earlier. So once I drag everything in, this just takes a while, especially if you have a lot of separate elements in your layouts, but it's gonna be worth it. So I'm just going to use this layer and put it at the back of the previous layer. So as you can see, there are a bit of hints of that turquoise tealish color. So I'm just gonna move it further to the left, to the right. There you go. Now sometimes it's gonna be a bit off, so you can always go back and draw on them. That's what I like doing, and I use mostly my pencil because it's easier to trace along. And again, this isn't streamlined, so you can really edit as you go. But generally, I don't really edit a lot of things just because I don't really find it that has to be too perfect. Just a bit rustic is fine. And if you are feeling pretty extra, you can actually use the eraser tool and create more detail here. I will show you an example. So first I'm gonna color this whole layer because not the whole layer is colored. And then I'm gonna use the eraser tool and proceed with this 6B. And what's gonna happen is, did it work? I am going to create dots. Did you see there? So you have some sort of texture going on. So that's pretty cool. Let's try it here. So it adds a bit of effect to the whole layout. And I'm just very particular with like little details that don't really have to be that big and really just have some sort of character that builds beyond the layout that was idealized and visualized in mind. So see, just something as little as that can actually make a big difference. And it sort of complements the whole dot area that I was having here. I can erase this part. So eraser tool is not just really for erasing, but more of for enhancing some of your work. So there. Ideally, I would be done with this, but I like adding texture to my background, so I'm going to use this Halftone Brush. And what it does is it actually creates a really subtle texture. I use this dust inverse. I set it to the highest size, and then I get this I actually just use my finger to get the eyedropper tool. Using this color, I'm gonna make it a bit darker. So you will be able to see, let me see, I don't really want to have a big difference. You'll be able to see that there's like a slight change in texture and overall look of the artwork. Unfortunately, you cannot drag the whole thing, so I'm just coloring in the whole thing with my brush. And yeah, I think that is done. The drawing guides don't show up in final, so you can actually just export this and you're good to go. So what I do is I press the toolbox kit icon thing, click share and click JPEG and export it to my camera roll. So the final look will be like this. So it's actually not that hard, so there you go. You can now post this on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or wherever you want to share your artwork. Oh, and don't forget to add a watermark. Usually I put a watermark in this part of my lettering, so just so people won't steal your artwork. And now you can close the app and close your iPad. So that's it for this video. I hope this quick tutorial gave you an insight on how I do my digital lettering. If you have any more tips that you want me to share, let me know in the comments below and I will definitely get back to you. Thanks again to Skillshare for partnering with me on this video. Don't forget to click the link down below for the first 500 subscribers to get access to 2 months worth of Skillshare Premium. Further on, if you want to subscribe to their classes, it's just really affordable for only around $10 per month. So that's a lot of classes in just a really affordable price. Thanks for watching and I will see you guys on the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and keep posted on my new videos on art and travel. Bye!